name is Morgan Mason. Thank you so much for joining me today. So this is part one of a three-part video series titled Small Shifts for Big Impact on Your Reading Instruction. I am a professional learning specialist here at Keep Indiana Learning, and my area of expertise is in early literacy. So we're going to jump right in. All right, so like I said, this is a three-part video series. Now, the goal with this series is, I know that the science of reading has really taken off in the past couple of years. I have been researching, reading, participating in trainings all around the science of reading, and I know it can be super overwhelming. I know that there's so much information out there, and I remember listening to things and reading things and thinking to myself, like, oh man, when I was a classroom teacher, did I do it all wrong? So the hope with the series is that you leave here with not only a feeling of, okay, I'm not doing it wrong, but it gives you a chance to kind of reflect on your own practice and think about, okay, this is what I'm doing. These are some small shifts that I can do that better align with the current research that will in turn help me better support the students that I'm serving. So part one today is small shifts in your language and delivery of instructions and lessons. All right, so we're going to talk about three small shifts that you can make, and they're going to be very small. So it may seem silly and it may seem minuscule, but the first shift that I want you to think about is a subtle but critical shift that I actually learned about during one of my trainings, and it's all about how you're delivering your instruction, especially when it comes to that phonics and phonemic awareness. So the shift that I want you to think about is starting with the sound and ending with the spelling. So I have an example for you. So let's say, and I know thinking back on my experience as a first grade teacher, I would normally introduce the CH sound and I would say CH says ch. Now, the shift that I want you to think about making is switching it so that you're saying the sound first and then putting the spelling with it at the end. So instead of saying CH says ch, you would say the sound ch says CH. So I know it seems very small, but the reason why we do this is that we are being more explicit, and so the brain doesn't have any chance to confuse what we are teaching. So if we're very explicit and we're very clear about giving them that sound first, it's going to help the brain better record that information. And what else? One other thing that I love about this shift is that it doesn't require any extra work. It doesn't require you to write new lesson plans. It doesn't require you to do a whole bunch of extra planning. All it is a bit of a mindset shift. It'll take some getting used to, I'm sure, especially if you've always done it the original way that I first explained, but those little things can make a big impact in the classroom. All right, and the next shift that I want to talk about is taking a closer look at your day and examining it from a different perspective. So what I want us to focus on is the what and how you're asking questions, and then how much adult talking versus student talking is happening. Now I know that there are so many good teaching practices out there like turn and talk and things like that get students engaging with each other. But I want you to think about how you're creating opportunities for very intentional conversation with students, because that is the way that they are going to learn, is by practicing using those muscles. So classroom conversation is super important. We know that. Something else that I want you to think about is not only how can you create meaningful conversations with your students and among your students, but how can you create opportunities for one-on-one conversations with yourself and a student, because that's also going to be a great way for them to be using those muscles, those comprehension muscles, practicing some of the skills that they have been taught, is with an adult that is experienced and obviously knows them really well. So written and spoken language share a lot of the same real estate in the brain, which is why and this is, again, a small shift. It doesn't require a lot of additional planning or a bunch of changes that need to happen, but it's thinking about your day and looking at it in a different perspective of how many opportunities am I actually giving students to talk to each other and use those muscles and practice the skills that we've been talking about. All right, and the third shift in this first part of the series is when thinking about explicit instruction, thinking about engaging all of the brain's processing systems. So listening comprehension, which is a very important piece of getting to reading comprehension, they have to have that part first. Listening comprehension requires 3 processing systems: the phonological system, the meaning system, and then the context system. So the phonological listens for and produces the speech sounds. So that's the first step. The second step is the meaning, and that retrieves, the brain is actually retrieving every meaning that it has for a word. So even words like, I'm trying to think of an example of a word that has multiple meanings, that especially that kids would know. The brain is going to retrieve all of that, and that's where then that third processing system comes into play, because then the context processing system will have to take what it knows about the definitions of each of those words to put it with the context to make meaning out of it. So again, not a lot of additional planning. It's just a mindset shift for you as the teacher to think about, okay, how can I engage all of these processing systems, and how am I thinking through how my students are going to be using these processing systems when I am giving explicit instruction. So I personally, if I was doing this in the classroom, I would probably just make little notes to myself to help me remember until I got into more of a habit of thinking about it in this way. All right, so let's quickly review. Like I said, 3 small shifts, and mainly in the way that you're thinking and the way you're delivering your instruction and your lessons. 1, focus on the sounds instead of the letter names or the chunks, those names. Number 2, looking at dialogue throughout the day with a different lens. How many opportunities are you giving students? And intentional opportunities, not just a quick, all right, turn and talk for 30 seconds, but creating that space for them to really use those muscles. And then the third being engaging all of the brain's processing systems. And that's more for you to think about as you are giving that explicit instruction. So that's it for video series number 1. Again, my name is Morgan Mason. I am a professional learning specialist here at Keep Indiana Learning. Please join me next time. We have 2 more parts to this video series. I also hope that you may be interested in a workshop that I will be delivering here in person on December 7th. So a little bit a ways away, but all of this that we've talked about this morning, we will dive deeper into that during the Building Blocks of Literacy workshop at CIESC. We will, I'm really hoping that teachers, administrators, coaches, whoever comes to this workshop leaves with a whole toolbox full of things that they can take back to their classrooms and use immediately that align with the current research, the science of reading, and everything we know now about what or how the brain learns to read. So hope to see you there, and I hope to see you next time for part 2 and part 3 of this series.